The so-called Slut Walk reconvened over the weekend. Of course, this started up, at least in Seattle, the Seattle version of it, about a year or so ago. There was the first Slut Walk, and then this was the next incarnation. Our own Linda Thomas was down there over the weekend. About how many people showed up for this?
There were fewer this year. There were about 500 the first year that it was held in Seattle. I would say yesterday there were about 100 to 200 women and some men as well.
Right, and the underlying idea behind this is women should not be treated as sexual objects just because they are wearing the clothes that they want to wear.
And it's specifically in response to a comment a Toronto police officer made in 2011 saying, if women don't want to get raped, they shouldn't dress like sluts. That really started a movement with women saying, wait a minute, how I dress should not dictate whether or not I am a victim of this violent crime.
And I don't think anyone would disagree, any thinking person would disagree with that notion. That being said, I was scrolling through the photos of this event that the Seattle Weekly had, a bunch of them,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed a sign that really jumped out. And the woman who's holding the sign, she's dressed in a very revealing outfit, as were many of the people there. She's wearing a kind of a black, lacy, I don't know all the terms. I don't know if that's a...
It's probably healthy that you don't.
Would be a negligee, maybe, but she's basically wearing lingerie.
Right.
And she's carrying a sign that says, if I look nice, it's for my pleasure, not yours, so F off.
Mm-hmm.
And, she uses the real F word.
Yeah. I took some photos for our website, mynorthwest.com, as well. It was difficult to take a photo that didn't have a sign with the F word in it.
Yeah.
And their march, even, as they were going from Occidental Park down to Westlake, was rather profane. It was like, if I say yes, that means F me. If I say no, that means F you. So this is what they were chanting as they were going through the streets.
I guess I wondered when I saw that sign. And again, I obviously support the underlying premise that women should not be harassed, catcalled, made to feel unsafe, touched in any way based on how they want to dress.
Mm-hmm.
But something about this sign kind of rubbed me wrong, because I guess I felt like if you want to put on lingerie and walk through the streets of Seattle, and if I as a guy look at you and it somehow sparks my imagination or my interest in some way, does that make me some sort of super creep?
I don't think it makes you creepy to have some kind of reaction to a woman who's wearing something revealing, but you can't act on that. And I think that is what the point they were trying to make, is that you can't act on however you feel just because of the way a woman is dressed.
I understand that, but I guess I feel like for some of these signs and some of these people, and she doesn't represent the group, she's just one person there,
Mm-hmm.
it felt like the pendulum sort of has swung into this other, obviously one side of it is, you're walking down the street and guys are yelling stuff or coming up and standing near you, making you feel uncomfortable. That's totally unacceptable. But now I feel like for some people, the pendulum has swung to the point where it's like, hey, if I want to walk down the street naked and you look at me, back off. This is for me. And it just seems to me to be trying to unwire what has been getting wired in guys' brains for hundreds of thousands of years.
And I think the point of this, though, is the whole point of a protest or a demonstration like this is to be provocative in some way, so you can get headlines, so you can get us talking about it on the radio. And to that degree, this worked. If they had all just kind of dressed marmishly, that is a word.
Sure,
Mm-hmm.
school marm.
If you just dress up like a school marm and you quietly have a little conversation in a tea room downtown, obviously it's not going to get these headlines. I don't think a lot of these women necessarily want to wear a negligee on a Wednesday on their way to Starbucks. And I don't think you're going to see them doing that. And if they do that, they are expecting you to look. And I don't think anybody's saying you can't
I don't know, though.
look.
If there's a sign that says, if I look nice, it's for my pleasure, not yours, so F off. That doesn't sound like, hey, man, let's all just do our thing. That sounds like somebody who's saying, I can do anything I want, and it's purely about me, and any reaction you have that I don't like makes you wrong. I mean, that's what it feels like to me as the reader of this sign.
But any reaction you have that is against the law is wrong.
Sure, but what about, I'm just saying, if she had put a footnote in here that said, if I look nice, it's for my pleasure, not yours, although I understand that you will have a reaction as long as you keep that inside, that's fine, so F off. That to me would have been a better sign.
That would
At
have
least
been
more
a
accurate.
longer sign.
Less,
for sure.
less punchy, but more accurate, or more, maybe not accurate, but I don't know, more to the point that I hope she's trying to make.
The sign, if you go to mynorthwest.com and look at my blog, there's a woman who's holding a sign that I think maybe gets to your point a little bit better. It says, naked or clothed, respect is what I'm owed. That's the point that she was trying to make, and I think that...
I've got no problem with that sign because I agree with it completely. I also, it's interesting talking about, Andrew, about this being provocative, and here we are talking about it on the radio, and I'm wondering a little bit about the efficacy of these sorts of things. I mean, what it feels to me also is that you have a bunch of people who are pretty like-minded, who put on some zany outfits and made some signs and went down to Occidental Park and then marched around and then went home. I don't know if this changed anyone's opinion. I think it confirmed for the people who already agreed with this notion that they're in the right. So I don't know. I mean, is this just sort of choir preaching in a negligee?
Here's how I think it might have changed opinions. And you know, you can look at the presidential conventions from the past 2 weeks. Did those change any opinions? Probably not. People already had their mind made up.
Now, had Romney wore a negligee,
that
you would not be allowed to have feelings about it, Linda.
You know what? And I'm sure I wouldn't either. But what happened was you had a wide age range of women there. There were some women, I talked to a woman who was 73 and said, you know, in my day, we'd never dress like this. I talked to a lot of women who say, you know, describe themselves as being feminists for many, many years. I talked to a girl who was 16 who'd never been politically active in anything like this before. Her sister took her to this event, you know, so this 22-year-old to 16-year-old having this experience together. And I think the way it may change opinions is it's going to affect that 16-year-old. She's going to be more active in her school. She's going to be more aware of women's rights. At least this is what I'm hoping from talking to her. And I think it does have an effect on that very small level. In terms of changing the world, nope, no march is going to do that.
I think the reason that I have a hard time finding this inspirational or some sort of, Selma civil rights-esque movement is because I live in Seattle with a bunch of, sort of liberal elitists who would never catcall someone, and the women in my life aren't usually finding themselves in too many situations where this is a real issue, at least as far as I hear. And so, but what I've got to remember is outside of this bubble that is genteel, liberal, urban Seattle, there are lots of places, and I don't just mean like suburban Seattle, but I mean other cities, other parts of the world, just places where it's not like walking down my street in Mount Baker. Because when I think about women who are walking around in my neighborhood, as far as I've seen, nobody's harassing anybody. And so this to me feels like, well, do you really have to do this? But I guess what I have to remember is there's a lot going on in parts of the world that I'm not hanging out in, and it's a very different scene.
And there were things going on beyond just the issue. I talked to a lot of people there about, why are you here? Why are you at this event? And many of them said it's about equal rights. It's about equal pay. They were bringing up comments that Rush Limbaugh had made earlier this year and Todd Aiken, and they're saying, we really want to stand up for women's rights. Listen to this woman, Alice Wheeler, who says she's a feminist and she's proud to be there.
Last year was the first time I've ever seen a women's protest in Seattle, and I've been in Seattle for over 30 years now. And Seattle's always been a man's place, so I think that it's kind of cool that the women are finally stepping up and taking our equal place.
I respect her. I respect her point of view there. I do think, and we're out of time in this segment, but I do think it's interesting that in attempting to make a point about how we are not to be objectified as women, there was a lot of bikini and lingerie-clad women who were showing up in a lot of photographs that a lot of guys were ogling. But, I mean, maybe that's where we are in 2012. Maybe we'll be somewhere different years from now. Linda Thomas, thank you very much.
You bet.